Never would have guessed the twist of this film was M. Night trapping all of us into listening to his daughter's music. What is up, everybody, and welcome to my review of the newest M. Night Shyamalan film, Trap. And this was genuinely one of my more anticipated films of the later half of the year. When I first saw the initial trailer and heard the concept and the story hook of this film, I was instantly sold. What a great premise, what a great hook, which seems to be something that is kind of just M. Night's greatest strength. For all of his faults as a director, he is somebody that no matter how many times I've been disappointed, no matter how many times he's taken these big swings and absolutely missed for me, when I hear the premise of his next film, I'm just like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Added in with the fact that this is starring Josh Hartnett as the lead, and I have always been a massive fan of that guy, always been a huge champion of his, wanting him to get the resurgence that he seemingly is having right now in his career, and the fact that he was going to be a lead again in a movie in for what feels like a very long time, I was so ready for this. So the basic premise and setup of this film is that you have this father taking his daughter to her favorite pop star's concert, who is played by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. And as they're walking around this concert, he starts to notice there is a ton of security, there's a ton of police presence, there's a bunch of security cameras, and he finds out by talking to one of the merch workers at this venue that the entire concert is a ploy and a trap by the FBI to trap this serial killer that they got a tip is going to be in attendance at this concert. And the initial little hook and twist of this film is that Josh Hartnett, our protagonist of the film, the one that we are experiencing this story through, is actually the serial killer that they are hunting. And a lot of people called foul when this trailer hit, and they said, dude, you just blew the movie. You just spoiled the movie. Now I know what's going to happen. And, you know, I don't think that that is correct. Even me saying what the plot is, I guarantee there's going to be one or two people that said, you just spoiled the movie for me. It's literally the setup. It is literally the plot of the film. It is no different than me telling you that Bruce Willis stars in The Sixth Sense as a psychiatrist. And as I said, that premise just hooked me so much. And the fact that seemingly, unless he had some surprises in store for us in the third act, which you never know, that M. Night's a crafty little bugger, him actually giving the twist of his film away in the first 15 minutes and that being the setup of the rest of the film, that's something that's a different pace for an M. Night film. And so I checked out the movie last night at its latest screening, and this is going to inevitably be one of the most disappointing movie experiences of 2024, and currently it's my number one. So starting off with the positives, the one thing that I was pretty sure was going to be awesome about this movie, and luckily it was, and that is Josh Hartnett's performance. Can some other director just see this as a proof of concept that this dude is a fucking juggernaut that has not had his due yet, and put him in a movie that is much better suited to his talents, please? Don't let the quality of this film put him back into the Josh Hartnett disappearance. Give him his own movie that he can fucking rock at with a great script and a great story behind him, because for the little that they give him in this script, he does a damn good job with it. The different layers that you get with this character, where he is both creepy and quirky and relatable and then very sinister. He nails every single shade that they are trying to get across with this character, predominantly in the last act of the film, which unfortunately is my least favorite act, and we'll get into all of that. But that is the one spot where he really gets to shine in the more sinister edge of his character. So I think he did a fantastic job, and for all of my criticisms that I'm going to get into with the writing and even some of the directing of his acting through M. Night Shyamalan, he shines through all of that. For the first 45 minutes or so of this film, they do a pretty good job at realizing and executing this premise and this concept. There is a good amount of suspense. I don't know if I would call it tension necessarily, because that was never really tense, but intrigue is probably the best word for it. How is he going to get out of this? What is he going to do? What little things is he going to put in place and be crafty with to try to circumvent this seemingly inescapable situation? For the first third to maybe the first half of the film, I think they do an entertaining enough job at executing that premise. I also thought Ariel Donahue does a really good job. She plays Hartnett's daughter, and partially because she's the only character in this movie that is written to act like an actual human being, talk like a human being, interact with others like a human being, not a fucking alien from planet Shish Kebab, and asking all of the right appropriate questions for how fucking weird her father is acting, which is something that sometimes is a really hard thing to suspend your disbelief with in situations like this. Like when her father is continuously leaving her in this concert to go and assess the situation or try to figure out an escape plan, every single thing that he says to her, she has an appropriate response to. And so for a lot of the humor that fell flat for me, the humor of her being like, what the fuck? That's weird. Like, that actually worked for me, and her performance is one of the reasons why.
That's crazy. We can't go down there. You're acting strange. Is something wrong, Dad?
No.
And my final positive is that there is a mid-credit sequence. It's very early on in the credits, so you don't have to stay very long, that I found to be genuinely hilarious. Again, for the amount of humor that did not work at all for me in this film, there is this little surprise epilogue scene that genuinely got a good laugh out of me, which was relieving because the emotions I was having, the mood that I was in by the time the credits rolled, I was just so done with this thing. And that last little scene, I was like, all right, you got one last little smile out of me. I'll give you a smidgen of credit for that. And now moving on to the negatives. First of all, since I've already pretty much said it twice in the last minute, there's a lot of intended humor in this movie that falls completely flat for me. I don't find M. Night to be a very good writer when it comes to humor. The only movie of his that I can think of where there was intentional humor that landed is Signs. You have a movie like The Happening that is absolutely unintentional humor in my mind that lands, but again, that was a happy accident. You have a movie here where it's a very tense, grounded, and suspenseful premise that all the way throughout the movie, through his dialogue writing and through some of the situations, he tries to have kind of this oddball sense of humor, and damn near every single attempt just made the movie feel strange and made it feel tonally inconsistent. Like, there is direction that he clearly gives to Josh Hartnett to deliver some of his oddest lines when he's interacting with staff at this venue, when he's interacting with this woman that he's like a neighbor of, that does not feel like a human being. I mean, I liken it almost like Josh Hartnett was channeling Nicolas Cage's performance in Kick-Ass as far as being like the quirky father. And it's just so weird for one of the many things that I'm going to get into later, because it's like you're trying to shield the fact that you're a serial killer by acting normal, but you're acting anything but normal. If Dexter acted this way, the fucking show would have been over in 2 episodes. And I've seen people online already just trying to, like, I would even say gaslight everybody into swearing that that is like the brilliance of this movie and the brilliance of a lot of M. Night Shyamalan's lesser work is like, yeah, the dialogue that he makes people act like aliens, that's intentional. That's his style. You have to get into it. Like, it's a you thing. No. It's not a me thing. It's fucking weird. Another big issue with this film is that it is one of the more blatant examples of nepotism that I have ever seen. Now, I have never really been somebody to be all that up in arms about nepotism. If your kid is a very talented person and they have the ability to shortcut to a great career because you happen to be their parent, I don't really have an issue with that as long as they're talented. You know, you have the Jaden Smith, Will Smith situation in After Earth, which is anything but that, but I've never really been somebody to get that offended by it, as long as they're talented. And you have his daughter here who plays Lady Raven, who is the pop star that is the central figure of this setting, this concert. And when she is singing and performing, you see a lot of genuine talent there. You're like, okay, I could see her having a really great career as a singer. Good on you, M. Night, being somebody that has risen to success as her father and typically self-funds your own films, and saying, I'm going to use the resources available to me to help my daughter and give her a career. Great. As a father, you should do that, and I can't say that I would do anything different if I had the resources that you had. But the amount of time that this movie stops and focuses on her songs and her performances is way too much. I mean, you have damn near entire songs, like the movie just pauses, and it shows her go through a whole musical number and just occasionally cuts back to Josh Hartnett in the stands going like... And after the third or fourth time that this happens, you have this realization of, oh, okay, so Lady Raven and your daughter is not the backdrop for this intriguing thriller premise. The thriller premise is the backdrop for your daughter's music video. And to take it a step further, unfortunately, M. Night basically hands this movie to his daughter in the third act and makes her the main character suddenly out of nowhere. Which wouldn't be that big of a deal if, one, the third act was written better, and we have yet to even get into all of that, and two, if she was a better actress. Clearly a talented singer, clearly a talented performer as far as music, as far as dancing, and I don't know if she wrote a lot of these songs, but if she did, clearly a talented writer of music. Not a great actress. And her taking the reins of this movie away from Josh Hartnett in the last 30 minutes or so severely hurt the movie for me, as well as the fact that this movie does not know when to fucking end. We all can think of examples of a movie with multiple ending syndrome. This is possibly the worst example of that I have seen in maybe over a decade. There were 3 separate conclusions that this movie had where it gives you this feeling that we're heading to the ending, and then it just keeps going, and then you settle back into your chair, and then it keeps going for another 15 minutes, and we're heading to an ending, and then it keeps going. And for those that might be enjoying this film and enjoying the ride, that's going to be a good thing because it keeps kind of teasing you with where things are going, and you're kind of heading in unexpected directions because it keeps making you get false feeling that we're heading towards the close, and we're not. But for me, it was just drawing out the agony that I was in by the last half of this film. And also, it goes from one cliche serial killer movie ending to another one to another one. So if there was like a really good ending that was in sight that we had to like get through a couple of endings to get there, it would have all been for a good cause. But because we get to one point that feels like 7 other movies that I've seen, just to advance past that to another ending that I've seen a dozen times, to ultimately end at another ending that I've seen a dozen times, it just was like twisting the fucking knife. But by a landslide, with all of those issues in mind, the biggest issue that I had with Trap that just drove me absolutely nuts throughout the majority of the runtime, which is absolutely going to depend on you and how your brain works. The amount of conveniences and contrivances and illogical things and absolute stupid bullshit that this movie relies on to make its story work, way overboard for what I can tolerate. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of movies out there where 1 or 2 things have to rely on bullshit. We gotta cheat a little bit to make our story work. We are dealing with fiction here, like, we can forgive a little bit of that. And I can forgive a little bit of that if the movie's good. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't think that would work necessarily in real life, but whatever. We're watching a movie, I can forgive you. Then you have the next limit you hit, which is where now we have started to either have too many of them or you're getting a little too ridiculous with your contrivances, where I simply just reach the point of being disappointed in your script writing. I might still be enjoying the film, but I'm bummed out at the fact that you had to cheat and stick to bullshit to make your story work when you could have used a couple more passes on your script and hopefully alleviated that. Then you have DEFCON 3, which this movie just plows past, which is almost every single plot point in this film relying on absolute bullshit to make it work. And I can't fucking forgive that. I'm sorry. If your movie requires me to shut my brain off and fucking take drugs to be able to not call bullshit every 30 seconds, you're not giving me a good movie and you're not writing a good script. The amount of things that happen in this film that make both the police force that is led by the FBI, by the way, look like the most incompetent motherfuckers on earth, as well as Josh Hartnett's character, who is very sly and sinister and smart in some scenes, and then in others looks like the most incompetent fucking serial killer you've ever met in your life. You are tanking the premise of your film. You are tanking any bit of suspense and any bit of tension that you were getting because you were just making all of this absolute bullshit. Now, I have reached the end of my spoiler-free segment of this review, but to completely convey how ridiculous and how infuriatingly stupid this movie's writing is, I have to get into some specific examples of what I'm talking about. So, if you have not seen this movie yet and you don't want to be spoiled at all, this is the end of the spoiler-free section. You can fast forward and mute until you get to my rating and my final thoughts if you want to, or go check the movie out for yourself and come tell me what you thought about it. But if you've already seen it or you don't care about spoilers, now we're getting into it. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Why didn't you warn me?
I did. He totally did.
So the entire setup of this film is that there has been a tip that a massively dangerous and deadly serial killer is going to be in attendance at this concert. So hundreds of law enforcement, including the FBI and SWAT, have surrounded this building and actually inhabited the concert, basically at every corner you can think of. And yet there are so many points in this movie where, for no explainable reason whatsoever, a guy that fits the fucking description of the serial killer that they are looking for is able to walk past cops left and right and nobody stops him. Even though multiple points in the movie they pause to show you somebody elsewhere in the stadium that fits Josh Hartnett's description is getting yanked away and arrested or tackled, he walks past an entire room of cops at one point. But because he has a fucking name tag, they don't bat an eye at him. You have an employee that they showed in the trailer who has this friendly interaction with him and says, "Psst, so this secret thing that for some reason we all, like regular employees, have been fully briefed on and I'm not supposed to tell anybody, you're kind of cool, so I'm going to fucking tell you even though you might be the serial killer." Yeah, they're actually trapping everybody in here because they're trying to hunt the serial killer. And as if that's not weird enough, later on Josh Hartnett has an interaction with this character where he literally takes him into the employee-only section backstage in this stadium to get a t-shirt. Like, completely obliterating any of the supposed safety protocols that we're going through here. And why the fuck no cop was in front of that door or in the backstage area? Again, doesn't quite make sense to me. Multiple scenes in the movie where, as I've already said, Josh Hartnett has an interaction with an employee, or multiple scenes where he has interaction with law enforcement and acts so fucking weird and bizarre, and they don't question that whatsoever. Again, even though he fits the description of the killer. And all of that would have went away if we just didn't have this weird signature M. Night strange alien dialogue. If he just acted like a normal person, you could get me to suspend that disbelief. Maybe he doesn't completely fit the description. Maybe the description is a little vague and they're not going to tackle every single person. Who knows? I could go there with you. But when you make him act like a fucking freak, and he's like, "Hey man, hey, I see all the cops surrounding everything, you know, what's going on? Something happening?" Any employee with a brain is gonna be like, "Hey, I got the motherfucking serial killer right here." You have employees at the concert, because of a scheme that Josh Hartnett was able to put in place, are like letting him backstage. You have a fucking wall of SWAT saying, "No, he can't go back here." And they whisper something in his ear, presumably about his daughter's fake diagnosis of leukemia. And they're like, "Okay, he's good." Again, despite the fact that he fits the description of the fucking killer that there's 2,000 people looking for. Then you have the entire third act. Oh yeah, we haven't even gotten to the third act yet. And I left some shit out. I could do a whole review on bullshit. We get to the third act. And even though we're supposed to believe that this Lady Raven is like Taylor Swift level, she's able to leave this concert that is also a FBI trap for a serial killer with zero fucking security. She's trying to exact some weird plan inside of Josh Hartnett's house to foil his plan as a serial killer and out him to everybody. So she grabs his phone, runs into the bathroom, locks it, and for like a solid 5 minutes while she's on Instagram Live and talking to the police and literally imploding his entire fucking life, all he's doing is knocking, let me in now. Like that motherfucker wouldn't blast through that door. Again, smart serial killer, but that type of dumb shit gets in his way? Really? Then we get to the first false ending, and the movie continues on as him as this limo driver in disguise, and he's taken Lady Raven, and she's handcuffed, and then gets in the middle of this crowd and seemingly fucking teleports because he just somehow exits the car and ends up in street clothes. With hundreds of people surrounding this vehicle, and a bunch of people shooting into the vehicle, not one person saying, "Hey, the guy that like got out of this vehicle changing clothes, he's standing right there." Ends up back home with his wife, who he has realized at this point is the one that set the whole plan in place, which is the one moment where I felt like the third act was starting to redeem itself, until she says, "Wait, before you kill me, let's have pie." And again, for what's supposed to be a genius and diabolical serial killer, he sits down to have one last slice of pie with his wife, doesn't notice at all that she's not taking a single bite of hers, doesn't look down at his pie at all to wonder if she fucked with it, and lo and behold, she fucked with it. All leading up to maybe the biggest bullshit moment of the entire movie, which is the third ending, where the cops have now come upon him and have arrested him and are putting him into the armored vehicle, and they actually let him not only walk by himself and move away from all of these cops, but let him go and mess around with this bicycle. You know, under the guise of, oh, I'm just OCD, so I want the bike to stand up. And none of them think to, like, pat him down or, like, look at what he's doing or, more likely, stop him from fucking moving whatsoever. And so then we get the ending of, oh, he's going to release himself because he pulled one of the spokes off of the bike. Fuck you.
Do I look stupid to you?
And again, there are multitudes of things, dozens of things that I haven't even mentioned in this segment, but this is the type of movie that it is, and I wish that I could have the same experience as some of you guys that are going to fully acknowledge every issue that I brought up and say, you know what, I still had fun with it though. I was able to suspend my disbelief enough to actually enjoy that. I envy the fact that you're able to do that. I can't. When it reaches the point of a movie literally insulting my intelligence as a human being to make its script work, I have tapped out. I can't fucking go there. And even worse, when this movie ends and you realize the amount of bullshit and contrivances and bad writing it had to utilize to make its story work, compounded with the fact that his daughter's singing career was obviously the main objective of this film, I can't help but be cynical and feel like M. Night just wanted to film something to showcase his daughter and gave the most half-assed writing attempt of a script to wrap around it and excuse it off to the audience as a movie for them to pay for. And that just drives me fucking nuts. I would like to have more faith in the guy, but when you're a dude that cast yourself as the greatest writer in the world who's going to save the universe because of how brilliant his writing is in Lady in the Water, I start to have pause about you basically trapping everybody to give us a nepotism advertisement for your daughter. Doesn't feel that far-fetched. So overall, guys, look, as frustrated and as rant-fueled as I got in that last segment there, the movie does have some value, mostly Josh Hartnett. There is a premise in here that is intriguing for a section of the runtime. I just wish the script got a number of more passes, a lot more effort and attention, and we actually got a good execution of that premise. But this is yet another M. Night film where he hooks you with the story and then absolutely fumbles in the execution. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my most recent M. Night Shyamalan ranking up here. The one you're seeing on the day of release is a couple years old, but here on Sunday, it will be updated with my new ranking, including Knock at the Cabin and Trap. So like, share, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that ranking. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.